military services who've been fighting and fighting, um, you know, they don't see any future. And so they kind of can welcome a third party that is, holding the space of saying we're neutral, we're not taking sides with any either of you, and we will help monitor ceasefire. We will help train civilians around you to monitor ceasefire so that there's a buy-in. Like the ceasefire isn't somebody else's project, and the community understands that this is what's going to help them stay safe.
Yeah.
And I think the Philippines and Mindanao in the Philippines is the great undertold peace success story
Mm.
that should be all over the news. It should be everywhere. Everybody should be looking at Mindanao in the Philippines. I'm happy to say that when our program started, I think about a third of our team were internationals,
Mm.
and two-thirds, or maybe even half, were internationals, and the other half were Filipino nationals. And the situation in Mindanao has improved such that our entire team in Mindanao now are Filipino nationals. They no longer feel that they need the presence of internationals in order to do the work that they need to do and to be safe. And that's a success.
Welcome, my friends. Thank you for joining us. I am very pleased, very grateful to introduce you to Gilda Bettencourt, who is joining us as a spokesperson for the Nonviolent Peace Force, NP. And they do wonderful work with unarmed civilian protectors going to hotspots in the world, zones of conflict, and helping to keep the peace in those spaces. It's very brave and courageous work that we have a great deal of honor for, and they do a number of other wonderful things in the world. And so I'm hoping we get to touch upon some of those qualities and factors as we chat. Gilda, welcome.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Appreciate it. Such a warm welcome. Yes, I've had the good luck of being able to be with Nonviolent Peace Force well, I started volunteering in 2001 and I became staff in 2004. So we can all do the math, 24. And that was a great introduction. That was a really succinct introduction of Nonviolent Peace Force, which is a really challenging thing to do because it's Nonviolent Peace Force does and is also trying to do so much more. One of the things I would add is that we do this work of trying to increase human security, civilian protection. We do it with communities that invite us. So Nonviolent Peace Force doesn't look out over the world and decide where they're going to go today. They respond to invitations from communities that feel unsafe and want to increase their security and safety without the use of weapons, without escalation. So that is what we try to assist in doing. Yeah.
It's wonderful work. And yeah, I've been hearing some fantastic actions that have been taken. And I am wondering, specifically, if you don't mind, I like to begin my interviews because so many of the people watching are activists who are in the field and in the midst of the turmoil and the troubles. And very often when you're in the midst of it, it can feel overwhelming and difficult, especially dark times. And so I'm wondering if you don't mind sharing something that you are observing in the world, something in your life that is bringing you hope.
Yes, that's probably one of my favorite questions. And I like ruminating and encouraging people to think about the same because we so need it right now, right? It's funny. My knee-jerk response is Nonviolent Peace Force. It's what gets me out of the bed in the morning because I'm part of a team of people from all over the globe. Right now, I think we're somewhere between 300 to 400 people who are dedicated to trying to interrupt cycles of violence, trying to help keep people safe, to protect civilians, to prevent violence, to promote peace, right? And so I need something like this in my life so much right now. And so that's what keeps me going. Of course, in addition to my loving family,
Hmm.
and my group of friends, many who are like family. So yeah, that's what keeps me going.
I
And that's what brings me hope. Yeah.
That's wonderful. And I feel like that is a thing always worth mentioning is that it's our close companions that
Mm,
offer that not just a sense of solidarity, but a sense of something very important that nourishes us as humans. And very often people become loners striving for a cause or moving forward
mm,
without paying attention to the space around them. And so, for those of us who are
hmm.
willing and wanting to nourish ourselves while we help heal the planet and maintain these, to spread peace and love, then
Right,
part of our own nourishment must require, or at least should require for most people, that outreach and development of a community. And so,
right.
thank you.
Absolutely. I would go even a step farther and say you can't do it by yourself,
Mhm.
right? Like if you um if you think you can do this, I mean, you can take care of yourself and try to do things. I'm not discouraging people from being self-reliant, from having independent thinking, from, all the things that we cherish in the individual, right? Not diminishing that in any way. But we're talking about society and social challenges and things. And when we are working in that world,
Hmm.
we can't do it by ourselves. The part of the victory is in community, in having good relationships with others, in us living all well together. Just as there wouldn't be a victory of like I'm fine and everybody else is suffering, that is definitely not a victory, right? So yeah, I would say that. And I saw this beautiful email by Daniel Hunter from Choosing Democracy that came out recently that just really, it's just so beautifully stated the importance of self-care
Hmm.
and being all right. People who are really concerned in these times about how things are going, and but either they're ill themselves or they're nursing a newborn, or and they're feeling very torn because they feel like they need to do more than what they're doing in their own personal lives, which I understand. But he wanted to encourage people to understand also that that newborn needs you. Your body that might be going through some health challenges needs you right now, and you shouldn't neglect those. And if you do, we're not going where we want to go. The future that we want is one in community, also one where nonviolence also is expressed towards ourselves, you know um, our dear ones, our family. I mean, I think there's a still further to go if people feel that they are very righteous with the world, but they don't treat the people nearest and dearest to them, as well as they could. I don't know. So nonviolence starts at home, definitely starts with the immediate people around you, and then it should extend out to everyone else as well, as eventually. But if you think you're being great to the world, but you're being really, you've got some growth to do around the people closest to you, please do focus on those relationships, right? And that's another thing that I really love about Nonviolent Peace Force is that what we're trying to do in growing human security is a lot of security, as people know it, comes through threat and coercion, and we focus on relationships and connection, right? And usually our thinking is that when we're seeing violence, when we're seeing what looks like, outbreaks of violence, or usually some kind of relationship has broken down. There usually have been people that have been helping to keep things running smoothly. Those relationships have broken down, or maybe we've lost someone or a group of people that used to help things run more smoothly. And then that's where you see this conflict, that unfortunately conflict will, as we say in nonviolence, conflict will always occur. It's the violence that isn't a given, right? So we're not utopians who think like, oh, we'll just eliminate conflict and it will never, conflict will always return as long as there's living. That seems to be part of it. But the violence is the true enemy, right? There are, there are people who will think like this person's my enemy or that person's my. No, it's the violence because the violence always makes things worse. And if we eliminate the violence, we can start working towards the underlying issues that are bringing the conflict about and kind of work through that. So, yeah.
I'm so grateful for that. So, can you share some of the ways that the Nonviolent Peace Force helps to build that community and do outreach and to nourish that aspect of the planetary healing?
Right. Well, communities actually already exist,
Hmm.
right? So we're not necessarily the people who are trying to build community. We usually are responding to requests of assistance from communities. How we can support the communities is we usually offer training. And actually, even before we do anything else, we start with an assessment. So when we're invited to work with a particular community, we'll do an assessment that has many things that we look at to see, like, is it true that we will add, some benefit?
Hmm.
Do we see some ways that we might not? We have a no harm policy that's very much built into our three principles, three main principles. We have more, but I like to choose three, which are the nonviolence, our commitment to nonviolence, our commitment to nonpartisanship,
Hmm.
and our commitment to local leadership, right?
Oh,
So it's, the nonviolence, the do no harm policy, right? So that's why when we do the assessments, we take this very seriously. The nonpartisanship is this part that can be very tricky and hard because, people have a tendency to pick sides, especially if it's the side of the person who seems to be at the perhaps receiving the most harm in the violent conflict.
right.
And but in order for us to do our work and build relationships that need to be built, in order to increase the chance of the violence being prevented, this is the position that we take. We want to walk and communicate, talk, with all sides, with all parties who have any role in the conflict to increase the chance of reducing violence.
Hmm.
And then the local leadership, or what we call primacy of the local actors, the communities that invite us. It's their decisions to make how they want to proceed. We usually try to shine a light on the people who are experiencing, who are suffering the most from the violence that is occurring around them. And it's their decisions on what actions that they want to take to try to improve things, try to improve their security. It's not our piece to build, is, I guess, one of the ways I like to say it the most. We try to create a safe space for this work to be done. But ultimately, it's the community's choice how they want to proceed. We can share examples of how other places around the world, the choices, the tools that they had, the choices that they made, but ultimately it's their peace process to build and to go through.
I appreciate that so much. So first, don't make it worse, and then
Yeah.
empowering the communities that are actually suffering.
Mm.
And it does seem so important to avoid that
Mm-hmm.
of a savior complex to come from the people who are helping.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
I appreciate that so much. Gosh.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, definitely. I remember we have one of our oldest programs is in Mindanao, in the Philippines.
Hmm.
And I remember before we even went to that program, the debate that was going on in the organization, because there were smaller groups in Mindanao of local people in Mindanao who were doing work similar to what Nonviolent Peace Force does.
Wonderful.
But they did feel that they were under a bit of threat, and they believed by having the presence of internationals that they could continue to operate with just another layer of security because just as nobody likes to fight in front of the neighbors, this is, the little example that I like to sort of, really bring it home. The presence of an outsider and certain levels of conflict can change behavior, just as nobody wants to be seen doing something that they know, breaking a ceasefire or doing something of that sort. The presence of outsiders sometimes can make a difference. We don't promise that that will work in every conflict. There are some conflicts that do not care if an outsider is present, and also do not care, or they don't have a reason to. They're not trying to be seen as legitimate, or they're not trying to win global legitimacy, so that they're not as hesitant to do things that shouldn't be done. So Nonviolent Peace Force doesn't have a magic wand or a Superman cape or anything like that. So we are always analyzing the security of where we're at, and we know that we're more effective when there isn't a history of people from outside being targeted for violence. But that said, we always look for what can be done. Right now, we have a small team in Sudan. They're one of the few NGOs that haven't left the area. And because most of them are Sudanese nationals themselves.
Oh, good.
And they want to be with their communities, and they want to help their communities and their country folk as best as possible. And we've gone with the fall of El Fasher in the Darfur region. We've gone into full emergency mode. We've done other work there as well. We've done work since the Civil War, because we were actually there before the Civil War broke out, before the recent fighting in Sudan broke out. We were there. We got to be there about a year, actually, before the fighting broke out. And we trained. One of the things that we do once we start a program, and if the community has appetite for it, is we do a lot of training in community protection work, unarmed civilian protection work. So the training that all of our staff receives, we share that also with the community. And we do place a special attention with women because often women are not invited or seen as people who can contribute to increasing security. And I believe we've trained hundreds of women in Sudan, yes, in unarmed civilian protection. And these women are still there, along with our internationals, but the women have also gone to, I guess, the main point where people are evacuating to is a place called TErica. And they are, they multiply the power of what Nonviolent Peace Force can do. A team of 10 or 20 can only do so much, but if you have a couple of hundred other trained individuals, they can do much more. And they've been helping the people who are arriving in TErica to get medical care however they can, or help them remain safer and organize. We're getting information about what's going on there every day. And I've seen my colleagues being interviewed on the news. And I so appreciate that when the news folks ask them certain questions, they keep bringing the attention to the conditions that the civilians are living in. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about Nonviolent Peace Force, is that people may want to try to engage with us about conversations about politics and things of that sort. And what we keep trying to bring attention back to is, the suffering that people are experiencing, that civilians, I mean, these aren't fighters. These are women and children and elders who are in the middle of a horrible situation. And it seems that I don't know if the world is experiencing conflict fatigue, which I imagine could be part
Sure.
of it, but it's just so heartbreaking because Sudan is one of the largest humanitarian disasters that is happening right now, and yet sometimes it just feels really invisible.
Yeah.
I remember when El Fasher fell about a week or so ago. I was looking through my news stream and I didn't see it mentioned anywhere. And
Wow.
I was just, why is that?
Yeah.
Because I look up Sudan pretty regularly, and I would think that my news stream would be showing that to
Right.
me.
Your algorithm is
And
already
it,
trained.
yeah, I don't know why. It was a hard thing to experience, actually. So I have been on a mission to shine light onto what is going on in Sudan,
Mm.
as well. Right now, particularly Sudan. But of course, I like pointing out the programs that Nonviolent Peace Force has in its other locations as well. And we're in Ukraine as well. We're also in South Sudan. That's actually one of our oldest programs
Mm.
is South Sudan. We're in Iraq and also Myanmar
Yeah.
and Mindanao in
Mm.
the Philippines as well, Indonesia and Thailand, and the United States. Um, we have been in the United States since 2020. And yeah, it's the easy places. That's where we're at. So
Gosh.
is the joke that I make. So yeah, and I think actually the entire world could benefit from learning unarmed civilian protection. Everybody needs to be safe. So even though we're only in these countries now, it would be lovely if in my lifetime I saw people from every part of the world having some knowledge of unarmed civilian protection. I would like to see it actually in my own neighborhood.
Mm.
And I'm kind of thinking along those lines as well. I've been very, very focused on helping Nonviolent Peace Force, but I would like to, I don't know, I just think it's a kind of skill that everybody can benefit from. And lately, for those of us that live in the United States, I've been encouraging folks to take their local emergency response training.
Mm.
Because that's something that is available in the United States. It's funded by FEMA. It's in San Francisco. That looks like me training with the fire department to think ahead of things like earthquakes and fires, just certain skills that folks like. I know that the San Francisco Fire Department would like average folks to have because in case of an emergency, there are only 300 firefighters at any given time in San Francisco who will be able to respond to
Mm.
an emergency. And we're quake country. So, and I've been here. But I was born and raised in San Francisco Bay Area, and I was here for the quake in '89.
Wow. Yeah.
And I know it's real, right? And so I see it as part of is actually community care, of caring for yourself and caring for your community and your family, is to have some plans for, when the unexpected happens. So, and I think the encourage the United out their local emergency response training is because I think it will give them a very practical view of something similar of what Nonviolent Peace Force does with communities
Mm.
and help them plan, to assess security issues. What could go wrong? How could we plan for that? What could we do about it? How could we better keep ourselves safe? Think about this ahead of time really increases our chances, like disaster preparedness, right? It really increases our chances knowing how to respond, when we're caught by surprise.
Mm.
And I think it gives people very practical understanding of Nonviolent Peace Force. We help people create learning early response plans, because sometimes violent actors do show up, and we respond to that in a way that keeps safe as much as possible.
Mm.
So things like that is what we're up to.
Gosh, what a gift. And so other than for people around the world who are watching this, reaching out to their local fire department if they have one, or at least to the local government, what kinds of emergency training that they can receive or offer if they have that knowledge themselves. Is there something that
Mm-hmm.
the Nonviolent Peace Force in particular offers, perhaps online or in groups, so that people can reach out and learn a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely. So we are Nonviolent Peace Force isn't interested in being the only organization that practices unarmed civilian protection. In fact, one of our parts, there's three parts also to our mission, which is to protect civilians in violent zones of conflict, to work side by side with communities to help them to build peace, and to advocate for these approaches around the world so that they can be adopted by others. We believe these three things will help, get us closer to the world that we all want to live in.
Mm.
And so we make a lot of information available on our site. It is there for people to learn from. In fact, our whole manual of unarmed civilian protection is available there, also on our website. Resources, quick resources that might be useful to people. We encourage people, if this speaks to you, if nonviolence and nonpartisanship or local leadership, these are your values, I found Nonviolent Peace Force is your organization. So we encourage you to join us in helping this be not like a surprising thing. Oh, what an interesting group. But like, yes, of course, Nonviolent Peace Force, or unarmed civilian protection. This is the way to go. We've had people who advocated at the UN so much for, like 15 years or so, that now we've actually succeeded in having the UN put in their documents that they should look first at unarmed responses to conflict before they choose to use armed actors.
That's
right. That they should consider that option first. So that's a shift in the right direction, we think, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we encourage everybody to visit our website, see what's there for them. There are people to support you. That's one of the work. That's some of the work that I do. I do it mostly for folks on the western side of the U.S., but frankly, I don't care if you're in any part of the world and you have questions about Nonviolent Peace Force, please reach out to me. I'm happy to try to help get those answered. So we make all of these resources and information available, and we invite people to join us, support us at whatever level you can to make this work a reality. Follow our progress. I'm encouraging the emergency response training because I think it's good on so many levels. One, everybody who does it is better prepared themselves as an individual to take care of themselves, to take care of their family, to take care of their community. And by learning that, you can see like, oh, I can see how other people around the world might benefit about this as well. And there are parts in the world right now that the society, the infrastructure in the society isn't that offering that to people. When I see the trainings that we've done in South Sudan and in other locations in the world, I'm like, oh, yes, why weren't these trainings offered to them? But different communities are in different places in the world, and they don't all have the infrastructure that we have. So, this is a very good thing to share. So, what a wonderful reason for humanity to come together is to be concerned about one another's safety, right? So anyway, that's what, again, like I said, this is what keeps me ticking. This is what gets me going
I love
in the morning. And so the resources are there on our website. Please check out anything that is of interest. Um, and then, we know that people have lives and they can only give so much of their attention to unarmed civilian protection and nonviolent peace forces work. But, dive as deep as you like. And or otherwise just do whatever you can. Tell a friend. This
Yes.
is what I like to encourage people. If this, resonates with you or a friend that you think would be really interested in this, please share it with their friend because there's no advertising that Nonviolent Peace Force could do that would be as powerful as a friend saying, hey, I think this is a really interesting organization, or if you're interested in unarmed civilian protection, you have a friend who can study along with you. That's wonderful. Like I said, no one really should do things completely by themselves. And in Nonviolent Peace Force, we do not encourage like having an individual go out and do anything by themselves. We right now have one staff person in San Diego, who's California, who's getting a lot of support, regular contact, daily support from the rest of our team. And the reason that we really don't have another person with them right now is just that we've lost a lot of funding this year. We had some funding from the Department of Justice, from the previous administration, and that funding was eliminated this year. But hopefully next year, that person will not be by themselves. In this day and age, there's always someone nearby at least to speak to. But what I was getting at with this was that when you're studying unarmed civilian protection, have a buddy, get together and study it together, or even in your community, look at, what an unarmed civilian protection might benefit your community. And so, yeah, I think these are the main sort of call to action, let's say, that I have for people is check out what emergency response training you already have near you. And if you don't have any near you, that's also a good thing to note, right? You might want to create it for your own community or, whatever it is that's available.
Mhm.
And then to be part of Nonviolent Peace Force at whatever level appeals to you, investigate us, follow our progress. It actually was years, even though I volunteered with NP for years. It took a while for me to make other choices, as in support them financially, and then and I think I've always been studying unarmed civilian protection from the beginning because I was just so interested to know what this was all about, and it seemed so promising to me. So,
To me as well. And for those
yeah.
of you watching, all of the available links and ways to access this information will be provided down below. So please do check down below and follow their work in every way that we can. And if you don't mind, I have a few extra questions for you because
Oh, please.
it's such a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
I'm curious about one of the things that you mentioned was this quality of international attention. When the eyes
Mm,
of the world are on a space, like you said, we don't want our neighbors to be watching us do bad things.
right.
What are the lessons that have been learned? Because I'm certain that NP has been improving their skills over time with all of this experience. What are the lessons we've
Hmm.
learned about how we can best draw that attention, how best to make things visible so that there are more observers watching
Mm.
and more accountability available?
Hmm. Exactly. Um, well, I think we just keep bringing up these places, like Sudan, right? I mean, for a couple of years now, we've been trying to bring more attention to Sudan. Um, and I think instead of getting involved in politics or shaming and blaming situations, we just keep pointing back to the conditions of the civilians, right? Um, and this is important. We've in our very first program was in Sri Lanka,
Hmm.
and I remember we had an instance in our years there. I think we were there for about 9 years, or maybe a little more, maybe more like 11. Um, And what happened was we had one person who was on our board or a volunteer group who actually did some shaming and blaming, kind of moved away from our commitment to nonpartisanship and focused on one side of the conflict in Sri Lanka and kind of called them out publicly, which they could have done as an individual. That would have been fine. But they did it under the name of Nonviolent Peace Force, which was not great. Because then we had to go into a lot of damage control with the relationships that we've already built, and basically apologize and say, that person really doesn't speak on our behalf. And this is very tricky, but because everything that we do in mind is, to assist the civilians that are in a really tough situation,
Yeah.
and that always has to be the priority. There's place for other people who are seeking justice. There's room for all, but what we keep the focus on is human security and the people who are suffering most. How do we end the violence, the aggression that they are experiencing as quickly as possible? And we keep bringing attention back to that. That's why Nonviolent Peace Force isn't involved with distributing any material aid themselves. We do provide security. We have done that at some distribution sites where people receive material aid, just to make sure that pregnant women and children aren't pushed aside and others, come and take the aid, but that the aid is distributed in a way that reaches the people who need it the most. And that aid is distributed in a way that may not exacerbate the conflict, right? Like if aid is distributed in a way that only one side of the conflict is getting the aid and others aren't, that could just make things even worse, So we do this, what we call protection mainstreaming. When we have everything that the humanitarian world does, to also look at it through a lens of like, is this going to, make things even more challenging in the conflict, or can we do things in a way that seems to de-escalate? So that's always our goal: de-escalation, keeping people safe. And yeah, I hope I'm answering your question. If not, feel free to rephrase it in a way that'll go more in that direction.
Well, I'm just happy prompting you because your passion is obvious and there's so much to learn
Yeah.
about this. And
Mm,
I feel like there's so much power in simply being a center of peace in the middle of a conflict. And I love the
mm,
way you keep redirecting people toward the attention toward the civilians who are actually suffering. It's not about who's in
yeah.
power. Like the poor
Yes.
Sudanese and the history of this conglomeration that we call Sudan, they've only had
Hmm.
basically a few years of peace.
Yeah.
They finally, oust one possibly bad actor, and then the people
Yeah.
who have guns say, "I want power. No, I want power." And in
Yeah.
the middle are all the people living their lives. And
Yeah.
it would happen to any of us. And we would want the world to look and say, "Hey, that's not okay." And
Right.
and I just appreciate so much that power of people coming in and being willing to just be the examples of peace and loving and communal worldwide relationship, because that's
Hmm.
the example that we need. And
Yes.
I'm so grateful for that work.
Yeah, me too.
Hmm.
Me too. Absolutely. I forgot to mention one of our newest programs, which is in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Oh, wonderful.
They are, I believe we've been there a couple of years now as well. And I wanted to point that out. And that's another area that's experienced conflict for so long. We are involved in some areas that have, had conflict for a really long time,
Hmm.
like Sudan, like Myanmar, like the Democratic Republic of Congo, and other places. Maybe haven't. Those I think are some of the oldest cycles of violence that need to be interrupted.
Yeah.
And when Nonviolent Peace Force started, it had a feasibility study that really looked at the work that we do and really, taking it quite seriously. We're not claiming that we can do everything. But what can we do and what can we do well? And the feasibility study actually pointed out that we might be pretty good at if we get involved in a cycle of violence early on, before it gets too horrible, we might be able to deter it from getting worse, and which is very hopeful and promising. It's tricky because it seems like the older and more the conflicts that get a lot more attention in the media are always the ones that people want us to go to, are the ones that people are always asking us, oh, well, are you going to work here or are you going to work there? And sometimes maybe where we might be most effective are places that are experiencing conflict, are experiencing some danger, but haven't made the news yet, let's just say.
Yeah.
And that's tricky because people are always wanting us to go to places where it's super clear that something needs to happen. But the other part of the conflict where we might be most effective, and Mindanao in the Philippines, I think, was a good example of that, is, so here's a conflict that's gone on for decades and has really kind of gotten exhausted. Like it's really clear that neither side can claim a clear victory. And now they're kind of looking for like a way out. These young men who've been fighting in the bush, or military services who've been fighting and fighting, they don't see any future. And so they kind of can welcome a third party that is, holding the space of saying, we're neutral, we're not taking sides with either of you, and we will help monitor ceasefire. We will help train civilians around you to monitor ceasefire so that there's a buy-in. Like the ceasefire isn't somebody else's project, and the community understands that this is what's going to help them stay safe.
Yeah.
And I think the Philippines and Mindanao in the Philippines is the great undertold peace success story that should be all over the news. It should be everywhere. Everybody should be looking at Mindanao in the Philippines. I'm happy to say that when our program started, I think about a third of our team were internationals and 2/3, or maybe even half, were internationals and the other half were Filipino nationals. And the situation in Mindanao has improved such that our entire team in Mindanao now are Filipino nationals. They no longer feel that they need the presence of internationals in order to do the work that they need to do and to be safe. And that's a success.
It is.
And that's the direction that Nonviolent Peace Force has always hoped for. Because we're not interested in staying anywhere forever. We, want to create that space for locals to build up their strength, for the situation to improve such so that people can live their lives, focus on their own community safety. That is the ultimate goal, right? And out of that, we have people who've worked with us, learned from us, and then they are using those skills, continue to use those in their community, or if they choose to join Nonviolent Peace Force and work in some other part of the world, sharing what they've learned, we welcome that as well. A person who's very much involved with our work in Myanmar has been with us in Mindanao in the Philippines for more than a decade now. We have people who worked with us in Sri Lanka who went to serve in South Sudan. We have people from South Sudan who are working in Iraq. So yeah, I love that. I particularly love this global exchange, let's say, of people who are all concerned with human safety and security and helping one another achieve it.
Gosh, I feel like you're still answering my question about hope. You're flooding me with excitement.
No, I mean, I'm very, very serious and genuine when I say that this is what keeps me going. This is the vision, right? This is, and I think it's well worth working towards. Humanity, us being safe is pretty much the top concern, right? And it will be very hard to pursue other fields like medicine, education, if a community is not safe, they can't benefit for many of those things because they're on the run,
That's
they're
right.
on the go, they're
Yeah.
seeking safety. So we have so many displaced people in this world right now. We have people who have fled their homes because of violence more than we've had since World War II.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I'm sorry to share that, but that's the
Ah,
reality. That is where we are at, right?
yeah.
But just as in, World War II, we bounced back from that. The wars did cease and things do stabilize. So when we do remember, like big shakeups in the world, we should also remember that those things do stop and that there does some stability does settle in
Mhm.
and things go in cycles.
That's right.
So that's what I keep reminding myself. That saying that when things are really dark, that's when you can see the stars more clearly. That's I like that. I like that very much. I don't know if it's because I'm Portuguese and sailors used to use stars to guide themselves, when they sailed around the world. But we need that guidance, right? We need something to move towards, like a star, something like safety for all. You
Mhm.
know, this is I think our underlying thing. We all need to be safe. We not all need to be well. And then once we've achieved that, we can consider other goals as well.
I agree. Yeah, in that hierarchy of needs, there are certain basic
Yeah.
things we need to reach for. And I love this metaphor of even a North Star, because within Taoist philosophy and cosmology, we often talk about that North Star because there's the quality of the still point. Everything is moving around it.
Mm,
But if we can recognize the parts of our nature that are that stable, fixed quality, that
hmm
capacity for love, this genuine aspect of humanity, which is tends to nourish peace, which is grateful for community, that is the best of us, which is always present, always there, just gets covered up by conflict, more like a disease than a habit. It's a thing that comes on. And so by having some awareness of that North Star quality, that pole star, that is always part of us, it's always present. And so even though things seem to be changing and moving and they feel tumultuous or confusing and scary, there's always that aspect of human nature, which is it can bring us hope and can bring us toward the better part of ourselves. And so establishing a future of humanity around those qualities, around that aspect of human nature, which is the best of us, which never changes. It's always there. There's always something to look forward to with that. And it is something that definitely brings me hope.
I love that. I'm so grateful that you shared that, the still point. And yes, that's it exactly, And yeah, when you pointed out that sometimes people consider like failure almost kind of like disease, that is actually a way I often speak about violence, some kind of social disease, right? And unfortunately, I think we live in a time where people just think that violence is inevitable, like it's unavoidable, right? And they kind of, sort of give up or thinks like this is just a reality that we have to live with and such. And I remind people like we don't take that attitude in medicine and in health, right? We don't go like, well, we'll always get sick. We're always
Right.
going to get sick and die. So why bother? I mean, God forbid that we took that approach, right? And so I kind of look at violence in that way.
Mhm.
And when I talk about Nonviolent Peace Force and our desire to train people in unarmed civilian protection and have more people who are ready and called upon when they're requested to go and assist, I often point out the fact that about 150 years ago or so, we didn't have professional nurses like that wasn't a thing,
Yeah.
like we had physicians, yes, but you were pretty much dependent on having a loving individual who would care for you while you were sick.
Yeah.
That was it. And now we have a profession, which is the nurse, A lot of people don't know this about Gandhi, but actually Gandhi wanted to grow up to be a nurse.
Yeah.
And only it was his family that encouraged him to be a lawyer, which I think is a really good thing because he's an incredible example of what a lawyer can do. You know, lawyers get a really bad rap, and when I hear people talking negatively about them, I remind them that Gandhi was a lawyer.
Yeah,
So it's just the way you practice law. It's the way you practice it that makes all the difference.
that's right.
And so, we now have nursing as a global profession, and or I should say, a profession that's recognized globally. And I would like to see nonviolent protectors, protection officers, be seen as that as well. Maybe now is a good time for me to clarify that the people of Nonviolent Peace Force are not people who, they aren't volunteering their work. They do this as a living. They make a commitment to work with us for a couple of years, because it takes time to build relationships. We can't have rotating people coming through a program, but they help do this work. And so we compensate them so they can make a living at it. When the organization was first coming together, there was a lot of encouragement. Well, there was encouragement from some sides saying that protection officers should be volunteers. And people from the global south were telling us, like, well, that's wonderful if you all in the global north have 2 years of your life that you can just volunteer, but we have family and, who are counting on us to make a living. So you would exclude us if you would insist that this work was only done on a volunteer basis. And I think it would really hold things back. Nonviolent Peace Force isn't the first group to do what we call accompaniment work. Unarmed civilian protection and accompaniment is sometimes the full title that you'll hear. But we are one of the groups that grew really quickly. And I think it's because we came up with a model that allowed people to do this work and be able to take care of their families and themselves. If you're on a volunteer basis, you can only make so much of a commitment and then you have to go. You can only ask a volunteer to do so much, so I think we've taken it to another level. And I think also Nonviolent Peace Force has shown the world that anybody, with the right skills and training and such, from any part of the world could be an unarmed civilian protector. In the early days of this field and work, it was mostly people from the global north in the global south trying to protect communities there. But we've taken people from the global south all over the world and proven that they can be just as effective as anyone else. They just, need to be given the skills and support to do so. So,
What a gift. And that
yeah.
quality of how at some point, we made volunteer protectors into a professional military. Why can't we do the same with peacekeepers? And to
Right.
show the effectiveness of that and move our national defense qualities around the world more in that direction rather than putting money into tanks
Mm-hmm.
or bombs and furthering that same
Right.
cycle of disease that we talk about. Yeah.
Yep.
And some of my
Yeah.
own work has been here. And I grew up in Southern California, just a little south of you. And
Uh-huh.
I got to live through the LA riots, and
Mm-hmm.
I got to watch how violence just cycles and cycles and cycles. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I've got to do with other meditators and other things is we go to places, even during the very violent spaces in 2020 and around, and we go and sit in these spaces that are the most uh, conflict filled, and you can feel the mounting tension,
Mm-hmm.
mounting pressure, and it's just in the air. You can practically taste it. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just by being that quiet stone in the middle of it, being something
Mm-hmm.
that's doing something other than conflict cycles, you can feel it
Mm-hmm.
sort of disperse and people kind of wander away, and it no longer feels the same because there's something in the middle kind of disrupting that. And so
Mm-hmm.
having these skilled people who are doing far more than my friends and I were doing, but actually being part of something, drawing national attention, skilled people drawing in community, building those resources in the space is to me is just mind-blowing, and I can only imagine how effective it is. And so I'm just so grateful for the work you all are doing. Gosh.
Thank you. And we have out external evaluations done of our work.
Hmm.
So even though we have a lot of anecdotal examples, we completely want people to examine what we do, learn from it, say what works well, what could be improved, because this is obviously always a work in progress. And I want to, I I want to appreciate what you were telling me about going to locations where you thought maybe you weren't doing much, but I think there's a lot to be said of having a person who can just retain calm when, you can feel the tension and the pressure to sort of lose calm and to explode. A lot can be said, I think, for that. We might even be able to look at our own groups of friends or family, how there's there's somebody sometimes or a few people in those times who kind of manage to keep things calm, that sort of natural, peace oriented, peace building kind of individual who helps work folks through tension. And so I guess we are trying to use that in a very intentional way. Like we keep asking the question, like, what will interrupt this cycle of violence? Who do we need to talk to? Who do we need to get engaged? Who's not all at the table? What are all the actors at the table? Are those conversations happening? Because that improves the chances of some improvement. When you don't have people even speaking to one another, there's no lines of communication. Chances are that just eventually something bad will happen. And we shouldn't wait to that. We should start working to build those relationships ahead of time to improve the chances to prevent violence from occurring.
That's so wonderful. And I practice medicine, and one of the common ideas is that the medicine that gets the most attention is the one where somebody's been hit by a car, there's some terrible thing happening, they reach in, they do the amazing work of reattaching somebody's hand, which is
Right.
like a miracle. But often the most effective medicine is the one that comes far before that prevents the problem in the first place. And so
Yes.
in a way, the most effective medicine is the most ignored. And
Yes.
so as peacekeepers, if we can recognize those mounting cycles of violence or any kind of conflict showing up and do our best to heal it before it becomes a problem. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
will ever put you on a camera, probably, but you have made the world demonstrably better by preventing the problem in the first place. And so I feel like that kind of knowledge is very empowering because we can start to recognize our own part in these cycles of conflict, because all of these cycles started with those small waves. And if
Yes.
they had a chance to be smoothed over before then
Right.
it wouldn't have manifested in these larger
Right.
panic surges of violence.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've really, really shined a light on something that's so true. Another reason I was drawn to Nonviolent Peace Force was more of their preventive approach, right? Like, how do we prevent violence as much as possible? And that incredibly appealed to me because it's true. The things that get attention, the most attention, are the most dramatic.
Mhm.
And like for one of the tools in the toolbox that unarmed civilian protection has is what is called as interpositioning. When actually groups of people, trained people, do in a certain situation after long time of relationship building. It's not strangers appearing and saying no, stop, but it's like people drawing on the relationships that they have with one another and actually intervening to try to stop a violent act from occurring. And those examples are always the examples in Nonviolent Peace Force and in unarmed that gets so much attention. But what people don't see are all the meetings, all the efforts in trying to get sides to speak together day in and day out, really work that people don't find it's never going to be filmed by like Hollywood because we're used to seeing superheroes duke it out. And, who wants to watch people have conversations over a table and tea for on hours? But this is really actually what improves chances of a peaceful society. And I had this incredible example shared with me over the summer about we also pay a lot of attention to youth because youth are usually seen as one of, the groups that can be most involved in violence. And we believe that by engaging the youth into their own youth peace teams, they know best who to talk to and what may be useful in trying, what relationships need to be built. And our team in Juba in South Sudan had heard had verifiable information that they thought that there was a group of other youth who were really upset. What happened recently this year was that in the Sudanese conflict, there were images that were being shared of people from South Sudan who had been harmed in the conflict, and that was circulating around in social media. And this made a lot of people in South Sudan angry. And so there were these revenge attacks. They're like, well, if they're going to attack us, we're going to attack these Sudanese that are in our midst. Unfortunately, they probably hadn't thought out that a lot of those Sudanese who were living in South Sudan were fleeing the violence that was occurring in Sudan and have nothing to do with, the violence that South Sudanese were experiencing in Sudan. And so in Juba, protection of civilian camp, there's POC camp in Juba, there were these youth who were, had gotten together that they were going to exact their revenge. And our youth peace team, since they had built relationships with them, or probably knew them, maybe many of them all their lives, talked them out of it. They basically, they had those relationships with those people and said exactly probably things like I've said, like, these people, these Sudanese people here amongst us in the market and such, they had nothing to do with those folks that got attacked in Sudan, and is this really what you want to do, right? So they diffused the situation. It could have been a horrible mess at the market that day. Who knows what that would have cycled into? Because once you start attacking and using violence, it's like playing with fire, right? Yeah,
That's right.
And they stayed and they made sure that no one was harmed. There was a Sudanese baker that they even walked home just to be 100% sure that he would get home safely. And I think that was a brilliant example. But unlike, in our media that show fists flying as a way of getting things done, in reality, it's basically things like walking people home, making sure they get home safe, that accompanying women when they go out into the field to collect firewood so that they are not preyed upon and become victims. It's things like that, that we may feel powerless to prevent violence that it's occurring around the world. And what I think Nonviolent Peace Force demonstrates each day is there is more that we can do than we've even thought. Once we make a commitment to nonviolence, and we engage our creativity and our commitment, who knows what you can come up with,
That's right.
Yeah. People were very discouraged, about whether we would be able to do anything in Ukraine. And because, they're dealing with bombs falling and drone attacks.
Yeah.
And we have been promoting something called frequency analyzers, which are not, they're also, you could also call them drone detectors. They are not drone jammers, which would actually, when you try to jam a drone signal, people will know where you are because you're trying to. But frequency analyzers, you can detect drones without giving away your location or letting people know that you're doing such a thing. And with these frequency analyzers, which we've helped distribute, we've distributed them and we've given training on how to use them. Humanitarians that are helping evacuate people in Ukraine or deliver aid different things that are going on in Ukraine right now, they can get at least enough notice to understand that a drone is near them and on the way, and they can speed up if they're in a vehicle so that they miss the drone's attack. So this is something that doesn't harm anyone, but
Right.
increases human security. And so when we have that as our value of like real defense,
Mm.
right? Not offense, but like how do we protect ourselves and others? Um, and you really lean into that, all kinds of creative solutions can occur. So, yeah.
Amazing. Ah, Gilda, one of the questions I will often like to end with is one, of course, if there's anything that I've missed that I should be asking about that you wish people would ask you about. And the other is, do you have any specific actions that people can take next? The homework that you would give to whoever's listening to this, the next immediate
Hmm.
step for them to take, because I know
Right.
you're in the midst of it. And so I for one, will happily take that next step. I commit to it. Tell me what to do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, I've had other people encourage me to really um, focus on what is the call to action, for Nonviolent Peace Force. Because we kind of believe that the work sort of speaks for itself, and we want people to make it help us make it a reality. Um, but I do understand that people need more like, okay, specific requests. So I'll reiterate what I said before. I encourage everyone to check out what is their local emergency response training, if there is any. I understand for yourself that you're living in a community, so it'd be a good time to ask your community what plans do we have to respond to emergencies that may occur, horrible weather, or whatever you think might be an emergency. It's a good discussion to have.
Hmm.
So I encourage all of that because I think that will get people understanding like, oh, is this kind of what Nonviolent Peace Force does? Yes, in a simple way, I think it kind of is, even though there's more to it than what we do. But I think this is something that can also immediately benefit everyone. So I encourage that. I encourage folks to check us out, get more information about us, do whatever you can to help make this work a reality, whether it's telling a friend about it, studying a bit more about unarmed civilian protection. You can add your name to our email list and get monthly emails about what we're doing
Hmm.
if you'd like to do that. We encourage people to give to us once a year, or if you really want to make sure that we have a stable means and resources to do this work, a small gift or any size every month really helps. Things of that sort. To study unarmed civilian protection or nonviolence, I think they're both actually, is a good thing to do. To
Hmm.
find a friend to do it with, or to do it within a community, I think is even better, right? So these are the concrete, I think, requests that I have for everyone. I think this is all of us. The beauty of it is it's through nonviolent means. And so when you do something through nonviolent means, there's a role for everyone, any age group, anyone at all abilities, right? So I always encourage people who are interested in volunteering to think about the things that really make them tick, the things they just already want to do.
Hmm.
And is there anything in that they think they could use to help Nonviolent Peace Force as well? I think finding where your passions meet what Nonviolent Peace Force is trying to accomplish is a great way to volunteer because it'll have the fuel in it to keep you going. Yeah. So those I think are the best concrete things that I can request.
That is
Join
wonderful.
us, learn emergency response, engage your friends and family. Um, yeah.
Perfect.
I love the fact that you ask, is there anything that you didn't ask that I wish I had spoken? Because that's my favorite interview question as well. But I think we did a great job in covering a lot. And that's why I was so impressed with when you started and you described Nonviolent Peace Force so succinctly. I was like, oh, what a good job. That's a little challenging even for me because I've been involved in so long. It's kind of like, oh, what part am I going to talk about? And what
Yeah.
part is going to interest this person the most? So I usually have this approach that I'm just happy to answer people's questions. So if people want to reach out to me afterwards with more questions, please feel free to do so. I'm happy to do that. I see it as a real blessing that I get allowed to help people learn a little bit more about this important work.
Mm,
Yeah,
thank you so much. Well, we feel your work
sure.
blessing as well. And so let me share the gratitude that we all have for your work and for the work of the
Thank
Nonviolent
you.
Peace Force. And all of
Thank
those
you.
people out there, even if they're not wearing capes, we still feel that they deserve their own superhero movie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they do. They're amazing, amazing people out there. And so, and if people look at the work that we've made available online, they'll see they can verify it themselves. Don't take my word for it. Check out, what part of the world interests you most at the moment, and have a look. I'm inspired by these people every day, and they keep me going. And it's such an honor to be, able to work with all of them and try to advance what they do.
Mm. Gilda, thank you so much.
Thank you, John. I'm honored that you chose to speak with me. So thank you.